And I am and welcome you to the Otherworldly, the show, the Wednesday show for Changing Times, Changing Worlds. Tonight we have one of the ladies who is going to be speaking at Changing Times, Changing Worlds, and we have, since we didn't have room for all of the wonderful things she wanted, I said we cannot give up on making magic online. So can you do that on Otherworldly? And she said yes. So yay, she's here and she's going to be doing that. Leilani is she's a psychic, she's a healing facilitator, a diviner, Espiritista. You're gonna have to correct my pronunciation on that. A magical practitioner and an educator, and so she deals with spirit guides and ancestors, and she also has done a lot of work online. And yes, you can do magic online, and I think a lot of us, especially the ones who are going to show up for an online class, want to know more about that. So Leilani, we can yes, and she has asked for questions, so feel free to raise your hand or jump in if there's a dead spot in the air. So welcome, Leilani. I'm so excited about this topic and you being here.
I'm so excited too. I had a blast a couple of years back when I facilitated a few classes for Otherworldly, and I can't wait to do it again this time.
Yeah, and so what we want to know, I guess, is I love the description. Have you wondered, can mediumship development be done online? Can we hold sacred space and rituals online? And well, I'm sure we can't like dance in circles because then the headphones wires would get all tangled up. Can we secure the safety of our students? And let's start with that one, securing the safety of the students and clients from spiritual, that sounds like a very good place to start, because safety first.
Safety first. Well, I know for my classes and the way that I run things with my students and mentees is, before we do any kind of ritual, ceremonial, group work online, there are classes that need to be taken. There's your basic, spiritual hygiene classes, spiritual anatomy classes, spiritual protection classes, identifying spirits, discerning spirits, all the things that you need to know prior to walking into a session where you're going to be calling down spirits. So at least in my community, I ensure that the mediums that partake have either graduated from my classes or are already experienced mediums. I don't suggest this for just anyone willy-nilly. But I mean, at the same time, would you suggest that even if they were by themselves? Would you suggest that even if, you know what I mean? I think safety is something that is across all platforms, right?
Now, would you say that part of making a safe space is kind of like enclosing it to set up a definition between this is inside, this is outside? Maybe putting up wards, making barriers, and teaching your students to understand. This is like going in your room and closing the door. What do you think of that?
For sure. Exactly. And how you do that is completely up to your specific tradition. Or if you're not part of one, it would be up to your, instruction from your spirits and from your higher self. There's really no wrong way of doing it.
I suspect one of the things that a lot of people have trouble with doing this online is how do you maintain the connection between teacher and student, for instance, while you're keeping these safe spaces?
In the Afro-Caribbean traditions, which is where my practices come from, we take so much pride in involving music, singing, chanting, calls and responses, things that keep the participant sensorily involved at all times. So even if they're not you know, conjuring up something or doing or having like a major role in this ceremony, they always have a role to play overall in terms of sustaining and keeping that energy going and flowing. And they also have a role in sending that energy away as well.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting because it occurs to me that I have spent a lot of time thinking about the impact of doing things on Zoom and as opposed to doing them in person, which of course also, you know, is based on the reality of when the hell am I ever going to get to see some of these people?
Right.
But I have found some of the otherworldly sessions quite immersive. And if you have a properly protected and enclosed space, you can put out content that immerses your viewer, for lack of a better term, in the experience. And it's way more effective than I ever imagined it would be.
Yeah, for sure.
Because my experience here, participating in one conference, doing some presentations here on Otherworldly, sitting in the audience for a lot of presentations, I realized that there is a much better connection there that I would have thought possible. And I'm beginning to wonder if, you know, for those of us who can't travel anymore, you know, is this our way of getting into a global mind?
No, for sure. When it comes to doing mediumship or ritual or ceremony online, it definitely is not the same. You know, and you definitely can't say one is better than the other. They're just different. And I think what's beautiful about what you had said with regards to making the intent, this enclosed space that you're in, making the intent to have this experience, I think that is exactly the point. You know, we are dealing with the mind here, you know, and we're dealing with that interaction between mind and spirit. And that playfulness is really important to our ceremonies and our ritual, whether it's physically making the space, like physically something that transports you into another space, you know, dimming the lights, putting certain scents up, having certain things chime in the background or whatever, or whether it's completely a mental bubble that you are creating for yourself that places you in that space. Either way, it's that liminal in between that allows mind and spirit to play with each other. And I think being online allows us, like you said, you know, for people to who live so far away from each other to actually interact with each other on this level. But it also allows us to explore this idea that our tools are important. Like this machine that we're on right now is a very, I mean, you're like a few steps away from sentient here. Like there's so much going on, you know what I mean? And we're utilizing that as a tool. So the fact that our energetic, electromagnetic, you know, magical waves are now pulsing through the World Wide Web at speeds beyond whatever is pretty fucking dope, you know? It's pretty dope.
Well, you know, it makes me think about what actually makes this so much more interesting to me is the fact I'm sitting here, and except for the people who have just put up a little billboard or something, I can actually see people and I can hear them. There's body language, there's voice. You can hear what people are saying. You can see what people are saying. And to some degree, you can read what people are feeling. Now, this is a level of participation you normally would have to sit around the campfire for. But here we have a tool that lets us reach out, doesn't matter where we are. I mean, I'm quite sure that everybody who has seen me show up in my little window has a reasonable idea of who I am. And, I certainly remembered you when you were, clarifying the Espiritista, because I remember that very plainly from your the last presentation. So you get to know people, and then you get to know people again. I mean, Chipcon and I have known each other for over 30 years. So it's kind of funny to go back and talk about the old ages. But I really like the fact I feel real contact here. I mean, this is not like I go back to the days.
What you laughing at?
It's in the chat.
Look at chat.
How do I do that? I want to see.
Down at the bottom of your window, there should be a chat button.
When I was young and pretty.
Yeah, but I was strong and handsome. But there is real contact here.
Yeah.
This is like I've reconnected to Chipicon after all this time.
Mhm.
And we've gotten to know each other a lot better.
Yep, that's so
And-
fine.
So I definitely want to comment on that, because I think what's so cool about online is that it allows us a certain freedom to just sort of let our guards down. Like I remember
Oh, yeah.
going to Wiccan circles back in the early 90s, and there was a lot of pretense, like even though you were still in ritual space and people were playing certain roles and doing what they had to do, there was still this sort of rigidness that when you're behind a computer screen, you can just let go of that and be your authentic self. Like right now I'm talking to you guys like we done had dinner already, like my mama, like it's and that's the whole point, is that it allows you to sort of melt away those reserves. And it kind of reminds me of like divination, right? Like I remember someone way back when asking me, so Leilani, why do you wear like the head wrap and you have like the candles and all this and everything is so like, you got the this and the that. And I say, you know what? Some people buy a reading and some people buy a show. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that having that there in the background doesn't mean shit to me. But if that's what makes you feel better as my client, if that's what creates safe space for you, then I'll do that for you, and the computer is kind of like that. The computer it takes away the smoke show so that you just see what you see.
And back when Bill and I got together over the internet, it was text only.
Yeah.
So we didn't even have pictures to judge each other by.
By the way, truth to that, Arkenstone. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about dial-up modems and text-based interfaces. And it's kind of hard to read a lot through that.
But we
Here,
managed.
I'd like to actually put, reinforce and speak in praise of doing the show, because so much of it has to do with belief. And if you give the people what they're expecting, then they're more likely to buy into it. They're more likely to make that connection. When we are reading another person, we're reading their energy field. And if they don't let their shields down, we're not going to make that connection. So you need to do whatever little bit of magic with only a C in order to make the magic with a C and a K work, because that's where we make our connections. So do whatever it takes to get them to buy in. When Leilani is a healer. I'm a healer too, and I would so much rather teach somebody how to do self-healing than to do a healing on them, because then they can keep on doing it, and it empowers them. And that is why we need that connection. We don't need them to accept this gift from us. we need them to realize how powerful and they are themselves.
Mhm.
Well, that's
Leilani-
the teach man
Leilani.
to fish.
Yeah. Yeah, but I
Yes.
want Leilani to comment on that.
No, it's I 1,000% roll like that as well. I think, I mean, that's part of my brand, this is how we grow. You know what I mean? Everything I do it with the purpose of educating and with the purpose of guiding people to information and then just letting them rock and roll, and if they have any questions, they can always come back to me. But the goal is to get you to be self-sufficient and self-confident in your magic. And like we were talking about before, online allows us that ability to let go of those pretenses so that we can be that for each other and we can help each other and grow with each other. And it also helps us to develop our psychic abilities even better because, let's remember, before the internet, we still did distance healing on each other. And we did it with anchors. We did it with pictures. We did it with a piece of their clothing. We did it with, we needed something to anchor to that person so that then we can heal them from a distance. So how is that any different where now we have a real life moving picture on the other end of the screen that we can anchor to in order to do our work?
That makes sense. I'm not sure. I've heard about the Pat Robertson and those things where they say, put your hand on the TV screen and
Yeah.
and feel the energy coming to you.
Yeah.
It might work.
It might. I think it would.
I think it would because I've always been one to point out that Reiki and faith healing aren't really very different in what they actually do.
Yeah.
And that you're transferring energy. Now, the faith healers do it with a lot more song and dance and way more dogs and ponies. But at the same time, they're still doing the same thing. And so, I could believe it unless we're in a Cronenberg movie. You don't want to touch your TV then, but
I love what Stone Riley wrote here. Oh my God, excuse me. I'm just like blown away by this comment that every tarot reading can include at least some element of teaching tarot.
Yes.
And like that is you guys, like that's the way, whenever I have a session with someone, my session doesn't come from a place of like, I'm sitting across from you and I'm bestowing this knowledge from spirit to you. It's more like, okay, so I pulled this card and this card by itself means this, but the fact that it's facing this way also means this. And and I bring them into the story with me and I have them follow through so that when something isn't right or when something is related, they stop and they say, yeah, this is this. And it helps them to put the puzzle pieces together. I think it's really important that, we as healers, whether it's online or in person, need to understand that we're not here to heal. We're here to facilitate healing. Yes. And that's why I call myself a healing facilitator.
I love that.
And it's so true because I think about it, because it's like if I'm meditating and somebody notices, or, if I do a Reiki healing and to somebody who doesn't, I think, what are you doing? I said, I'm opening myself up to the universe so that, and then you can fill in the phrase of choice, God's love, the Holy Spirit, Chi, whatever. I'm not doing anything but allowing this to happen. And you could do that too.
Exactly. Now here is where it becomes dangerous when we talk about this idea of like relinquishing our pretenses and just allowing ourselves to be authentic online in order to do ceremony and whatnot. Where it becomes dangerous, and this is where the safety precaution comes in, to go back all the way to that original question, is that also relinquishing those pretenses allows you to be vulnerable as well. Right. And when we are in sacred space and we are calling down spirits, that could be a recipe for disaster if the proper protocols and safety measures aren't put into place. Everything from, you know, disturbances in the home, feeling ill, to full on mounting and being possessed. So it's really there's a balance. There's a balance.
Well, we never really did anything about putting up wards while we were doing Reiki healing, but in the words of a Native American elder, he said, "I am become as a hollow bone."
Yes.
And you're just a funnel. This stuff is all flowing through, which means, if I'm not mistaken, you're wide open.
Right.
I want to grab another thing from the chat, and Starwolf had a practical suggestion. He says he's got foo dogs, which are protective things, beside his modem. And since they are working on an energetic level and the modem is working on an energetic level, they can, and that just struck me as a very practical thing to pass along.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, even disturbances like your computer shutting off, the internet acting all wacky. Yeah.
Find the energy entities that can relate and provide stability to that environment. And I think, well, you know, I talk about the fact that I have found out that I actually am a magical person after all. I'm a kitchen witch and a techno mage. And I have to believe that there's something about my energy that influences the stuff around me. And I just, because I would always, oh, machines fear and obey me. But
unless they don't.
And techno-paganism has not been around for very long, and it's successful, you know. It's successful for people.
Oh, absolutely. And I look at it not from the standpoint of techno-paganism, but I now look for clues in the form of, where do I or someone else seem to have an almost unnatural ability to do certain things? And I've had, this is why I was such a great test engineer in high tech. I just had this instinct, and it was recognized by the people I worked with. And Jen has commented that, and I can go into the kitchen and I'm good at saying, okay, we don't have the spices. It says, what do we got that we can use? And I will almost always pick something good. I just wish I had the stamina to cook more. But there is this sense that this is something I've always been able to do without being able to explain why. And yeah, I just saw somebody getting their nose licked.
No.
So yeah, there, and actually one of the things, it isn't relevant to tonight's topic, but I've been chewing on a concept of either a blog post or a presentation or something, which I originally called accidental magic, and I am now calling unexpected magic. When you suddenly find out that you have this ability that you didn't realize, and now suddenly you understand what that ability really is. And that was my revelation a few weeks ago when I realized I was a kitchen witch and a techno mage. So
yeah, I think you're right about people having innate talents.
Yes.
My feeling is we have to figure out what we have to get people so that they understand that these talents can be real before we before we get them to recognize that they have one or another of them. It's like, are you a projective empath or a receptive empath? Are you, I talk to bugs, not usually a very useful technique, but it's real. It's good for getting a moth out of the bathroom.
I talk to animals, and I'm good with string and fiber. textiles.
Mm-hmm.
Stone, what did you mean by prior lives are very important in this?
Well, I have a very, very strong sense of that a lot of the talents that you have are derived from prior lives.
Ah,
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm recycling.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And be proud and happy about it. You
It's a
don't
little
know
like
what you
ground-
did, but you must have done something.
Well, it's nice to
good.
know I didn't lose all that work.
It's a little like
Yeah.
Groundhog Day, where he keeps going back for one more day of piano lessons, and eventually he becomes a,
Proficient.
world-class classical pianist.
Mhm. My
Yeah,
father used to always tell me that, do you ever notice that everyone is so mad? And that he would talk about, like our community. You ever notice that everyone gets so mad that we get reborn and we forget everything? And, we keep making the same mistakes, and that's why we keep coming back. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's not true though. We're born with all the gifts we obtained. It's the bad stuff that we forget, because those are the lessons we have to learn. But like all the tools that we got on the way, that we get to keep. That's just that's a matter of recollection,
Hmm. Interesting.
Mm,
Yeah.
I hear
Well,
that.
so I'm going to try and go back to some of the things that we're
Yeah.
trying to.
I pulled up the life as well, the what do you call it? The Facebook invite.
Yes, well, I guess we've already passed the can mediumship development be done online.
Yeah.
Having done many readings, yes, the energy, we are all connected in the northern traditions. It's called the web of weird. In Huna, it's called Ika strands. We are all connected. And hey, think about how often when a connection is not serving us and is draining us, every tradition has some sort of a cut that, break that,
Yep.
something to stop the flow back and forth. We all have that. And yeah, I guess what we're saying, yes, we can do that online.
Yeah. Well, one question that you have here, I think, is really riveting, is whether or not, online healing is ever going to replace hands-on in-person healing. And this is a subject that is really controversial, at least in my community right now. You could say that myself and like 4 other people are kind of ruffling some feathers in my community with regards to doing some of our practices online. And they believe that part of it is because some things just can't replace, placing your hand on someone and pulling something out of someone, or putting something in someone, just the physical art, that whole interaction in and of itself is a very powerful interaction. And it's a very important element to the ritual, is the touching and the physical and all that. We rely really heavily on the physical and material world, being slapped around with herbs, having smoke blown on our face, being spit on, like there's stuff, what I mean, that make the situation more so. And so the fact that we're trying to move that online to see if we can do this online is definitely ruffling a lot of feathers. And I have to just stick true to my guns. I believe, like, my opinion is, why do we think so little of ourselves? Why can't we? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're right. It is about the belief. It is about our connection to the highest force. It is about our relationship with our spirits. Do we have faith in that? Are we strong in those relationships and in our faith? And if we're not, then yeah, maybe this isn't for you. But if you're truly like in this, and you see someone on the other side who needs healing and they're suffering, if you can't find a way to empathically connect to that person, then this isn't the field for you anyway. And I'm going to hold true to that, you know, and it definitely pisses a lot of people off, but it is what it is. That's what I feel.
It's all, in my opinion, energy exchange of one kind or another.
Mhm.
There is that cosmic energy that, as Chipicon said, goes by so many different names. In Star Wars, they call it the Force.
Yeah.
But it
I
is
love
a
that.
cosmic energy that connects everything.
Hmm.
But there's also, if you're online, there's this electrical energy that you can also piggyback that transfer of healing on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of learning how to deal with the different energy. And if you want to send it on both channels, all the better.
It's interesting. I don't see the online stuff ever replacing the hands-on stuff, but I see it as a rational expansion
For sure. I agree with that.
of, and
Yeah.
it'll open opportunities to people who are able to work with it. And
Exactly.
it's more tools in the toolbox.
Exactly.
And I don't think the people who do prefer to do it the other way should be criticized at all, because they found what works for them.
Right.
But you obviously have a need to find something different.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about pushing the boundaries. I think for me, it's
Mhm.
about how far can our spirit go? And, you know, if we believe it's limitless, then let's see, you
Right.
know. And I mean, you have kids out here on YouTube practicing their telekinesis, practicing their
Oh, right.
pyromancy, practicing moving water like the fucking avatars, and
Hmm.
they're succeeding. They're succeeding.
Good for them.
And
I need to
that
find
is
these
something,
channels.
yeah, that is something that's amazing. And I think our Magick is really only touching the frontier now that we have technology. It's like right on the cusp of something great.
Well,
And
yeah. If
you know, the
look at
youth
it
are
from
definitely pioneering that as well.
right,
For
if you
sure.
look at it in terms of how long has this been around,
Right.
you know, because I always have, I keep thinking about a bunch of different things that have different timelines, like the fact that we diverged from our nearest genetic relatives 7 million years ago. And about 300,000 years ago, we evolved to the point where we developed the emotions, intuitions that we still have. And and now we're talking about things that have happened like last week.
Right.
You know, I'm sorry, progress is progressing a little too quickly.
But I mean, that's how technology works. It builds upon itself. And as it builds, it speeds up.
And this is kind of a Wild West time.
Yes.
Because it's wide open, it's unexplored territory. And in that sense, it's kind of lawless, because you don't have a bunch of predecessors standing around with their 6 guns telling you what you can and cannot do.
Right.
So we are free to explore, and you know, it's you can do any damn thing you want. Every action has consequences.
Right.
Some of them can be unpleasant.
And
But
I think that's and it's so important to have people who are elders. And when I say elders, I don't mean age. I mean experience. I mean people who can say they've done the thing. It's so important for us to have elders who are willing to take up that mantle and say, you know what, we're gonna traverse the World Wide Web with our little magical wands, and let's do it together. And the more of those people we get, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the image of the kids using the avatar symbolism, because this repeated, you could go see it every week or binge on it, you know, streaming, gives them something to try. And let's face it, a lot of us started out practicing what we were told witches do, or what we were told our grandmother did, or whatever, and they're practicing something that they're seeing on fiction and making it work. I watched my kids weather working and pushing storm fronts to either side of the campground so that we didn't get a storm come down on it. And it was inspiring to watch because it was working and cool. But they were getting a lot of their moves from the Avatar anime. So it and how many science fiction, how many fantasy worlds that, because in the modern world 100,000 of these books are out there, has created. I believe that somewhere there is a Hogwarts.
Word.
Because there are too many people believing in it.
Yeah.
It has to exist now, and it is the cumulative product of the belief of the millions of people. So I don't believe that some ugly thoughts by the original creator will tear down the edifice that is Hogwarts on whatever plane it exists on.
Right. Yeah.
And there are so many ways of magic being shown in these shows and movies that everyone has an opportunity to find something that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
And there is no one right way. That's what's awesome about this. They're getting exposed to a lot of different ways. And maybe they're figuring out that if they don't find the way that's right for them, they can start making up their own.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of important that we have. When I was a kid, there was just IQ tests, and now we recognizing logical, mathematical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, spatial intelligence, musical intelligence, bodily or kinesthetic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, naturalistic intelligence, which I think may be talking to plants. And how many are we going to continue to discover? We are, because we can now recognize that these are facets
literally
of
anything
human
is
ability.
possible.
Well, there are things people can do. How difficult it is to go from that. This allows somebody who has kinesthetic intelligence to find a magic that works with their type of interaction with the world. Somebody who uses mathematical intelligence is going to use that'll probably be Bill and his techno-majory, and interpersonal intelligence, probably what the people who are who are empaths have, because we have different aspects of how we interrelate with the world. We need those different magics. We can't all do the same magic. Somebody is going to be using techno-majory, and somebody's going to be using herbs, and somebody's going to be using crystals. We can't all be doing, and we don't need to all be doing it. Look at the redundancy of nature.
Oh yeah.
Well, in actual like normal world, I'm going to say normal. In non-magical reality, people specialize in different skills there. They find what's natural and best for them, and they go for it usually.
Right. And all magic still boils down to the same thing, is that the energy of the universe, the universe is suffused and saturated with an energy that is the leftovers of creation. And it doesn't even matter how you characterize it. The point is the energy is there. We're not talking about the cosmic background radiation either. We're talking about the vitalizing energy that makes everything alive. Anybody who is willing to study the concepts, take the proper precautions, and take the chances can open up to that, and then do whatever works for them. which is going to be based on their culture, their education, their emotions and everything else. So, but that's why I look at it and I say, it's all good. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're still picking up the same energy from the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And you're channeling it to some desired purpose. And like I say, it applies to everyone who does magic.
Now, Stone, do you want to expand on your thought there again? The common sensation when you're connected to the weird?
Yeah, I mean, I get this concentration sensation from poetry, right? You've got to put words to this, to the magic, to the weird. And like, for me, it's like a visualization of this immense space, a plain, a prairie with all kinds of things happening in it, all kinds of different beings. Visualizing the sense of space in that way that's familiar to human instinct.
Mm.
And this is
Am I
why
supposed
we
to say something else? I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, well,
Point.
I'm just saying this is what Changing Time, Changing Worlds does. It allows us, this is what the internet does. It allows us to get a chance to talk about this kind of thing, which you're probably not going to be able to do around the water cooler at work.
Yeah.
Assuming you even go to work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I rarely have people like mine just kind of dropping into my house in the last 3 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
Other
what,
than this.
again, and this is another one of the incredibly high priority reasons that I put so much effort into this and to what Jen does for CTCW, is because I have never seen so many like-minded people in my life.
Mhm.
Literally. I mean, there were 208 kids in my graduating class. There was one other that had the same kind of mindset I did. I'm doing much better here.
Mm.
And that's been allowing me to discover things I didn't realize I was.
Well, I like the variety that allows us to discover different possible ways to approach it. I'm still going back to, you need to, it's not that you need to believe that you can do the impossible, it's that you need to learn how. And other people have good techniques, and those techniques may include hitting somebody with herbs, or or blowing smoke in them, or singing in them. And certainly I think almost every culture has recognized that singing together
Mm.
Oh,
aligns
yeah.
our energies. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Well, how many spiritual traditions start with creation being the utterance of a sound?
Yes.
A lot.
In the
If
beginning,
you-
there was the word.
Right. And then, you look through it and you realize, oh, how many, it's all about that. Sound is the mechanism of creation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, even the Greeks realized that music
Mhm.
could be dangerous. They had all the different modes and all of that. And I will admit that some of them have very powerful positive effects on you, and some of them have very powerful negative effects on you.
Mhm.
So,
Does anyone have Hulu?
Yes.
Hulu.
we
Yeah.
have Hulu.
Yeah, check out a show called Motherland.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I've seen the first season of it.
singing witches, basically singing military witches, and
Yeah.
it's
Singing
really
military witches.
It's a
Yep.
whole force of singing military witches, mostly female.
but their magic is done through their voice and certain
Yeah.
pitches and certain, like, basically how they
Yeah.
weaponize their voice for the military. And
Wow.
it's like a whole thing, but it goes back the second and third season. They talk about the lineages of these witches and like the kind of powers they can manipulate the weather with their voice, like all kinds of crazy shit. You guys would love it.
Oh yeah, like
I have to watch
the,
more of it. Yeah, there's too much to watch. That's good. So it's hard to get around to
the
all of it.
the voice in Dune
Right.
and Jedi mind trick voice.
That's an
but
excellent
yeah,
point, Stone.
Exactly, Stone.
Power of group singing is measurable as electrical energy in physical hearts.
Mm.
Yeah, mantras, parametra.
Oh,
stuff.
geez, yeah.
Measure it can be measured if the group is physically close together.
Yeah.
The electrical energy generated by the heart can be measured with physical instruments.
Well, one of
So
the most
much of this can be when you're close together physically,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
putting it over the web works too, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, one of the most amazing things I've ever heard in my life, which I haven't listened to in a long time, because I used to play it on the tablet that Jen now has,
Well,
and that
we'll get it back to you. Don't worry.
we'll get that. It was a series of chants on Om,
Oh, yes.
and I spent the $1.99 to get the ad-free version. They had one chant for each chakra, starting at the root.
Mm.
And they had Tuvan singers in the group. And the first time I dialed up the one for the root chakra, I was just stunned because I could not believe that human voices could make that sound.
If you'll excuse me,
Like-
I have to step away.
It was like an earthquake. And they worked their way all the way up to the top chakra. But yeah, they would come in, and like I say, the depth and resonance of the voices was mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And I was-
To go back to the original question, when I mentioned that we rely really heavily on like singing and chanting and
Mhm.
call and response, even poetry, like Stone had mentioned. The reason why is because these particular songs have been passed down,
Mhm.
and they are connected to very specific spirits, and they are connected to very specific energies that change the space, like literally change the atmosphere. And this allows each person, each participant from their own home to be in a safe space. Even if that means to put their mic on mute
Mm.
and they can sing by themselves, like in their own space, if they don't feel comfortable doing it that way, but they could still hear
okay,
everyone
yeah.
else singing. That's really important too. It opens up for people who normally would not show up to an in-person ceremony or would normally not sing in front of anyone, even if they want to turn off their camera but leave their mic on. It just gives it gives something a little extra. These songs, and that's another reason why I had mentioned that the circles that I run need to be of students that either graduated from my intensive or are already experienced Espiritistas, because they would have already known the songs, they would already know all the procedures, because there's also things that you have to say every time you speak. There are things that you have to do before, during, and after the session is over. So that's why it's important that if you're a beginner at this, I highly suggest leaving the mediumship and the ritual aspect alone and focus more on meeting groups and tribes of like mind that can help spiritually develop you, so that you can prepare for those bigger situations.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, one of the things that was said earlier was that how do you feel that when we are in a situation like this, you learn to recognize what the energy feels like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's and if you haven't learned that before you get into the online, I think it's going to be harder
Yes.
to do that. How many of you have ever looked at a dream and said, well, was that just a dream, or was that something psychic happening? And
Right.
there's a different feeling when it was a working dream than when it was a, okay, your neurons are firing randomly dream.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, well, I've had a number of those for sure. And there was just this sense that was so freaking weird. I do not have any idea what was going on here, but it felt important. It felt like I should be paying attention. And, and I've had dreams that range from the what the hell was that all about to dreams where I could clearly see myself working through a personal issue and, making progress towards some kind of liberation. But
Okay.
yeah, definitely the dreams have different flavors. So
I'd like to ask Leilani for some tips, since you're more experienced than some of the rest of us are. If you could give us some tips for beginning to expand our effectiveness online.
Honestly, the same tools that you would use in terms of, getting your students ready to develop their clairsentience or their clairaudience or their whatever techniques you use, there's no difference. You can use those same things. The key is, like you said, to be able to identify subtle energy, because it's going to feel subtle in the beginning. It's, whether you just met these people for the first time or whether you are coming into circle with well-known people, it's going to feel very subtle at first. And I always say, if you're going to run one of these, definitely try your best to incorporate anything you can that's sensory, music, colors, prayers, chants, whatever you can to keep the audience engaged. Because the key is to keep those senses going. And I also like to do an email prior, where I send it out to the participants and I say things like, make sure you engage in your spiritual hygiene before attending, make sure you, adorn yourself with certain oils, make sure you do. And I give them some tips on how to come to a circle and feel ready to allow this to occur. I think it's a little bit more work than if you were to do it in person. Like I remember being a kid and, grabbing my girlfriends and being like, come on, girls, let's go to the park. Let's do our little circle. Let's do our thing. And it was like a slapstick, you would just grab a couple of things. You would, sit on rocks or stubs or whatever, and you would just kind of practice and do your thing. And it was different. Here, it needs to be a little bit more formal. It needs to be a little bit more structured so that you can maintain that energy, because that energy can easily dissipate because of the distance. Like I kind of explain it almost like the sun rays, when the sun is beating down on you, it looks like a triangle. It's coming down, it's at its most, and this is probably a bad example just because Earth is so close, but at its center point, it's just a point, but then as it goes out, it dissipates and expands. And that's kind of the same concept with, the energy in the space. It will be harder to maintain because everyone is so far apart. And the more people that are in the circle, you would think the easier it is to maintain it, but not necessarily. Not necessarily.
More moving parts.
Yeah, a lot more moving parts. And the key also too is building that confidence with the individuals that are there. They need to believe that what they're doing is possible. They need to believe that when they are being read by their peers, that it is truly coming from a place of connection. All of that matters. And the minute someone is not in the right headspace, you have to be able to sort of either redirect them or ask them to maybe take a splash of some spirit waters, or just refresh themselves if they need to, and then come back. Because the key is to ensure that that vibration is constant. And being a moderator of that is a hell of a job. It's a lot easier to see that in person. Yeah. But that would be the best tips I can probably give.
Well, it sounds like your skill set as an Espiritista has, the waters and things.
Yes.
Give you a set of tools that you can pass on that will help.
Exactly. In those emails, there'll be recipes. There'll be things for them to put together and to practice. So actually the ritual and ceremony starts way before we even meet up, because I get them engaged for the entire day if possible. And it,
Right.
it is a situation where we have to set, because usually it starts at 7 p.m. and ends at 11. But in real life, Espiritista misas, that's what we call them, misas, sesiones, veladas. These things can go on for days, nonstop. So it's really important to have endurance, to have spiritual grit. It's a lot. And when you're moderating that, especially when the spirits start to feel a little more relaxed and open, now you have the interruption of spirits coming in, because everyone is much more susceptible now. They're in trance, they're ready to go. And so as the moderator, you're watching people starting to change and like go through what they're going through in their channeling sessions. And you have to be prepared to neutralize something, ground something, calm something down. And that's what the waters and the smokes, that's what they're there for. But since we're not in person, one of the things that I recommend that each of my participants do is always have someone in the house that knows at least something about what you're doing, so that if God forbid something happens, there's someone in the house. Or if you don't live with anyone, have someone on speed dial that you could just press a button, or give us in the chat room the phone number of that person. And the key for that, and that's never gotten to that point, but the key to that is so that that person can spray you or put the smoke on you or do the things while the rest of us are doing the chants and are doing what we need to do to help calm you down. That's never really had to happen, thank goodness, but that's how we would handle it if it were to happen.
That's good planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I respect you for making that thorough plan.
Yeah, prevent the disaster happening. Since we're getting so close to the end, I want to mention that at Changing Times, Changing World this November 7th through the 13th, we're going to be having evenings Monday through Friday and all day Saturday and Sunday. And Leilani is going to be doing Espiritismo for the New Age and spiritual activism from a BIPOC perspective. And I'm going to remind me what BIPOC stands for.
Black, Indigenous, and People of Color.
Yeah, I thought it was people of color, but I couldn't remember what the BI was. I was thinking, okay, it's people of color who are bi. I'm sorry.
You don't know.
There's a niche group for you.
Well, it is somewhat, it's very nice to have somebody like Leilani coming, because a lot of the this particular wave of New Age tends to be upper or at least middle class white people who have enough free time and energy to be able to dedicate to this kind of spiritual development. Whereas an awful lot of people of color, theirs is involved in the community and and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but it's like it's a lot more practical you get with the Hoodoo and the Conjure and those people are like, yeah, I use these things when I need to.
Yeah.
So they may feel that we're off being silly, blessed bees, you know.
Aw, no.
But well, that I just love that. That was a comment in Buffy from Willow. It's like, but we do need to recognize the deep wisdom of people who have maintained their traditions, and so it's lovely to be able to include a little bit of that. So I'm going to I've reminded people this is my last desperate attempt to get people to reserve. If you have not yet reserved, registered for the conference, please do, because we have this challenge. If we can get 50 new registrations in August, then we add a second track. And at this point, it doesn't look like we're going to be doing that, but we're
Still 3 hours to go.
we're still going to have some really great things on the conference, and I'm looking forward to Leilani's. I am looking forward to, tell your friends about it. Aren't you going to feel awful if you tell your friends after the conference? The really cool workshops. Oh my God, you would have loved this workshop. And they was like, what? Why didn't you tell me beforehand? Because
I could be there,
you get for $45, you get the live, and you get to keep rewatching them for the next month. Or if you go to 85, then you can rewatch for a year. But this is a deal. So, and then if you want to see more of Leilani, then check out our YouTube channel and come to the conference.
It was such a pleasure, you guys. This was a lot of fun. You guys are a lot of fun to talk to.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's really fun to listen to you, and you really have great insights into what you talk about. And I'm left with this thought about talking about distance and realizing that one of the things you have to deal with when you do any of this online is what I would call dilution.
Yeah.
The filters.
The channel and the distance dilutes the energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm sitting there right where I can like grab you by the shoulders, there's nothing to stop the energy from flowing. But given where you are,
which I don't even know where it is.
And that's why the organization is so important, because you're not going to getting as much energy to these people as you would if you had them all crammed into your living room.
Right.
Well,
So,
okay, I'm going to say thank you again and push the button. You don't have to
Thank you,
go home.
guys.
And
Yeah.
thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Everybody say thank you.
Thank you.
Leilani.
thank you.
Bye.